commercial-free every weekday afternoon at 4:20 p.m. 60 minutes of non-stop music starts now.
Welcome to the show. My name is Charlton with Big C. This is Charlton and Big C Sports, coming to you worldwide on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C. And them good old boys down south, I want to say bienvenidos to all of our listeners in Latin America, also across the pond in London, England, as well as Paris, France. Of course, you good old boys in Canada. We love you in Africa, the Big C tribe. But there's no one we love more than the good old boys down south. You're the land of the free and the home of the brave on a beautiful February the 11th, 2021. Rondo Deportes, bonjour, Big C. How's it going for you good old boys down south?
Charlton, been a day of reminiscing, sitting around here with the rain falling, trying to figure out what was going on. And I started thinking 31 years ago today, Charlton, Buster Douglas shocked the world when he knocked out Mike Tyson in Tokyo. And Mike is still crawling around looking for his mouthpiece. Once again, I want to thank our frontline healthcare workers, nurses, doctors, first responders. They make sure that they bring around anybody who was knocked out.
Yeah, if you ever been knocked out, it's all fair level war. I want to say today's show is sponsored by your Northern California Cadillac dealers, home of the all-new Cadillac Escalade, the standard of the world. When you go by and test drive yours, just tell them Charlton and Big C sent you, as well as a fleet of Cadillac cars never stop arriving. Also, all around the world, just say Google or Alexa play Big C Sports Podcast. You will hear from our sponsors. You will hear welcome to the show. I will introduce Big C as the Mystic, and he'll do his thing from 3,000 miles away, and I really do appreciate the way things are growing with Big C Sports. You can follow Big C Sports on Spotify. You can follow Big C Sports on Xfinity, Comcast TV, Apple TV, Roku TV, Amazon Fire TV, and a lot of smart TVs all over the universe. But you better have a smart TV, or you'll be sitting there looking at a still picture. Man, I love pausing, Big C. I love pausing. It's like when guys get knocked out, they pause too. But we'll never pause on our Veterans Crisis Hotline. They really are experienced helping veterans and their loved ones get help. Big C, why should everybody care?
Well, Charlton, we lose over 24 great veterans a day to suicide in this country. And maybe when the Senate is done with this impeachment, maybe we can get some of our Republican senators to defend our great American veterans like they're defending Donald Trump.
Yeah.
Guys who did not turn on this country, Charlton, with insurrection and terrorism.
Wow.
But our veterans need all the help and support that they can get. We give out the National Suicide Prevention Hotline number, Charlton, but we need more Americans in that line of thought in helping our veterans, whether they're giving out the National Suicide Prevention Hotline number or just assisting a veteran in any way that they can. When you show somebody that you care, they have a tendency to respond, Charlton. But when these people feel that there's no hope, no way out, no one paying attention to them, They find alternatives, which are negative. So as Americans, we need to think about our veterans and what they provided for us, and let's provide a little bit back for them.
Very well said, Big C. I just realized when you said that we have many people in Congress that spend more time defending people who try to destroy the country than veterans who try to keep us safe. It's all fair and level war. 800-273-8255. That's 800-273-8255. Or you can text 838-255. That's 838-255 and get some help. Also, if you're online, simply go to veteranscrisisline.net. That's veteranscrisisline.net. You can definitely get our veterans some help. Also, very happy to be affiliated with Valley Homes Weekly TV on Dish TV, Direct TV, AT&T Uverse, TV 53, home of the San Francisco Giants and the Say Hey Kid, as well as the home run king, Barry Bonds. When you reach out to them, just tell them Big C sent you. Our goal is simple: recruit 10,000 real estate agents and brokers all over this great country, putting people back to work. Just like McDonald's does it, car dealerships do it, sports teams do it, watch TV and real estate work for you. 800-772-8624. That's 800-772-8624. If you're looking for opportunity and real estate, go to bigcsports.pacwm.com. That's bigcsports.pacwm.com. Most of our loans are underwritten by Rocket Mortgage on the wholesale side. Also, I want to say thank you to Xfinity, Comcast TV, and Comcast Spotlight for presenting Big C Sports to the universe, just like God said. Let there be light. Open your cell phones and just say, play Big C Sports Podcast. You will see all of our apps pop up from all over the world, and I really do appreciate the way things are grown with Big C Sports. We are in Black History Month, and you remind me of what Mike Tyson went through when he met Buster Douglas, Big C. He had to go out of the country and get some food poisoning to lose that fight, but I do remember he lost to Buster Douglas, and the round, I think the count was about 15 seconds when they counted him down, knocked out, Big C. But a knockout is a knockout, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, he had put Buster Douglas down, Charlton, earlier in that fight. I believe it was the second or third round, where Buster Douglas was down for 13 seconds, and the official did not start the count until he got Mike Tyson into the corner. And he came back to Buster Douglas and started at one. Instead of looking over to the ringside, looking at the official score, who was already at 3 when he started the count at 1.
Is that why they say there's a lot of shenanigans in boxing, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, I mean, it's about paying attention. You know, closed eyes will miss a lot when it comes to a boxing match, Charlton. But this was one of those egregious situations in the heavyweight ranks that shocked the world. It's one of the biggest upsets in heavyweight history, Charlton. And also changed the course of boxing for decades to come.
I thought, I mean, I love boxing. I thought another, and again, it's in the eye of the beholder. Like somebody judging a beauty contest. Who's going to decide who's more beautiful? Whether you're judging men or women, it's always in the eye of the beholder. There was a fight with Sugar Ray Leonard and Thomas Hitman Hearns, and I loved watching Sugar Ray fight. I pulled for him, seeing what he did in the Olympics, Big C. He was like Muhammad Ali, a smaller version of Muhammad Ali, but I think in my heart, Thomas Hitman Hearns beat him up, and the good old boys that were doing the Buster Douglas-Mike Tyson fight, they were on the scene too, Big C.
Well, Thomas Hearns did whoop Sugar Ray Leonard in that the last fight that they had, the second of the two, Charlton. I believe he won 8 of the 12 rounds that they had in the fight. I mean, that was there. He just dominated Leonard. He had Leonard on the ropes on a few occasions, but the boxing world did not want to see Leonard go down for a second time in his career. He had already had one tarnish on his record to Roberto Duran in Montreal, Charlton, in 1979. In that fight against Thomas Hitman Hearns, Thomas dominated him, Charlton, 8 of the 12 rounds, and they called it a draw. He even knocked Leonard down in the fight.
It's all fair in love and war, and I know everybody has their own opinion about who won the fight. I saw a fight one time. It was in a high school, and people were swearing that the person who was on the bottom won the fight. But sometimes it depends on the eye of the beholder. It's all fair in love and war. If you can stand up, usually you win the fight. The person on the bottom really gets judged as the winner of a fight. But speaking of the person that was judged the winner in society, I want to talk a little bit about Black history. We always talk about boxers when it comes to Black history, Big C. But Black history, by the name of Shawana Rochelle Kimbrough, Big C, a lieutenant colonel in the United States Air Force and the first female African-American fighter pilot in the history of that service. She flew the F-16 Fighting Falcon during the combat missions in Operation in Northern Watch, Big C. She's stationed at Nellis Air Force Base, where she's a member of the 78th Attack Squadron and serves as an MQ-9 pilot and mission commander, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, when we think about pilots around the world, not much notice has been given to female pilots. But to think about Ms. Kimbrough being the first African-American Air Force fighter pilot in the history of that service, Charlton. A lot of attention has been given to the Tuskegee Airmen and their exploits during World War II, being the first black fighter pilots in U.S. history. But Ms. Kimbrough, Charlton, to achieve that feat as a black woman, a lot of people that don't know history don't realize the involvement that black women had during the Tuskegee days. Back in those days, Charlton, there were no female pilots, so the women were not allowed to fly through those days during World War II. But they were the major support cast of those black airmen back during the Tuskegee days, Charlton, in World War II. They did everything except for fly the planes. They even were mechanics during those days. So when we think about the exploits of black women in the history of America.
Yeah.
And to have a black woman be the first female fighter pilot in Air Force history, Charlton.
Yep.
That's a phenomenal feat.
Yeah, phenomenal feat. My father was also in the Air Force, worked on jet planes, a mechanic. Also, he had to fly those planes too. They didn't trust you that you fixed them right, let you flew them too. So my father also a military veteran. One of the reasons I love honoring military veterans on our show. She was actually born in Lafayette, Indiana, the youngest of 4 children to Guarani's parents. Her mother and father migrated to the United States for education opportunities. Big C became a naturalized U.S. citizen by the time she was born, and she received her commission in 1998 after graduating from the United States Air Force Academy. When you think about that, Big C, later attended undergraduate pilot training at Laughlin Air Force Base in Texas and was awarded her pilot's wing in August of 1999. In 2007, the month of June 2007, she was assigned to the 31st Fighter Wing, Aviano Air Force Base in Italy, where she served as Assistant Director of Operations for the 555th Fighter Squadron, Big C, beginning October. In 2013, she served as an MQ-9 pilot and mission commander for the 78th Attack Squadron out of Creech Air Force Base, and that's actually located in Nevada. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, you think about it, Charleston. She has risen through the ranks, and she is a commander of an air squadron. That means she's in charge of all of these men's lives and their missions that they go out on, whether they're foreign or domestic, Charleston. She's in charge of all of these men. So you think about the rise of an African-American woman to ascend to one of the highest positions in aviation in the United States Air Force.
Yeah.
And to be able to have that achievement, this is the reason why I always talk about education. People want to laminate on athletes and how well they perform on their field of play. But when we talk about performing, Charlton, and performing in the field of life, creating opportunities for other people. Here's a young woman who became a trailblazer to show that any woman can accomplish anything that she wants. To become a fighter pilot in the United States Air Force, one of the most demanding jobs in the world, Charlton, to be sitting inside a $35 billion plane, and you're out there swerving around through the air. So as we want to always revel on athletes, think about those people who have used their mind for the betterment of society, themselves, and their families, and what that longevity can create over time. This goes back to the Tuskegee Airmen. When you think about the groundwork that they laid to allow other black people to become pilots in the United States Air Force, and we had a woman who saw that same dream that those black pilots saw in the 40s, were able to capitalize on that in the 80s and 90s, Joe.
Yeah, it's impressive, Big C. Shauna Rachelle Kimbrough, Big C, African-American Air Force pilot. You know, I was talking to some members this morning with the Council of Elders here in Northern California, a lot of intelligent black men who have been well accomplished in financial services, and many people know of those who have been in the clergy as well as military, and that's what a lot of African Americans have gone through, Big C. But what I really love about our program is, as I listen to a lot of programs, and I have since I was a young boy, rarely do you ever find any sports program where they bring on the achievements of African Americans outside of who ran a football fastest, who jumped highest playing basketball, who could hit a baseball farther. And that does a disservice to society, because the mainstream society, as well as our own society, they tend to only appreciate an athletic achievement, seeing somebody sweat, run up and down the field, and how high can you jump. And that's what I love, that we bring things to people's mind that say we are more than just somebody in a uniform. Big C, your thoughts?
I wouldn't clarify it as total appreciation, Charlton. I always looked at it as a distraction. If you pigeonhole people into saying that this is the only thing that they can do, then that's what everybody else looks at them through that same lens. If you identify somebody as just being a short order cook, then that's all they are, a short order cook. They're not a chef. They're a short order cook. If you identify somebody as being an auto mechanic, he's just an auto mechanic. He's not an auto salesman. He's just a guy who works on the car. And so often, we, as well as other shows, show black people just as athletes, Charlton. We only want to talk about their performance. That's the only accomplishment we want to address them in life is that that's the only thing they can do. We don't talk about their business acumen. We don't talk about their educational background, Charlton. We only want to talk about the highlights that they just produced in a particular game.
Yeah.
But it's well beyond that, because as you take a look back and sit around and say, okay, what have these people done beyond the game? And when they move on beyond the game,
Yeah.
what's left? Is there legacy left, or are you reveling over the next black athlete that showed up?
You know, that's so important. We opened up talking about, and you made fun of Mike Tyson. It wasn't me just thinking I run into him in an elevator. He might say you sound a little tall on the radio, if that makes sense to you. But when you talked about that, I heard Floyd Money Mayweather, and he's made multiple millions of dollars. And one thing he said that I was so appreciative of, as you know, mainstream likes to say whatever they can negatively about Floyd Money Mayweather. We're all human. But this man talked about how many investments he has in real estate and other investments that you find on Wall Street. He didn't talk much about boxing. I just thought about that as you said that. But at the same time, when you put black men on TV, oftentimes these sports shows go around. They only want guys to talk about how hard did you tackle somebody, how fast did you run, how high did you jump, and then we complain that we can't get an interview when we've trained them to come onto their shows and say, yeah, when I played ball, this is what I did. When I played ball, when the last time you scored a touchdown? Oh, that was 20 years ago. So what have you done in the last 20 years? You rarely hear what they've done in the last 20 years, and that's what I love changing and talking to you about, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, I mean, it's so simple. I mean, it's easy to fall into that trap when you're identifying athletes. You only look at them as an athlete. You don't look at them as a person.
Yeah.
It's just like Tampa just winning the Super Bowl. And you think about Shaquille Barrett, the outside linebacker, number 58 for Tampa Bay. Here's a guy that everything he's done in life, Charlton, he's had to do twice.
Yeah.
He had to go to 2 grammar schools while he was growing up. He had to go to 2 different junior highs. He had to go to 2 different high schools. He had to go to 2 different colleges. Now he's on his second NFL team. He won a Super Bowl ring with the Denver Broncos in Super Bowl 50.
Yeah.
Now he's won a Super Bowl ring with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in Super Bowl 55, the double nickel. So his whole life is surrounded by 2.
Yep.
But it started with education. Think about if he had become frustrated as a young man in grammar school. Say, I don't want to do this anymore because I got to change schools. What about junior high when he had to change junior high? Even in high school, when he had to go to his second high school, a lot of kids get frustrated and drop out.
Yep.
He was in college at Nebraska, Omaha. They dropped the football program. He transfers to Colorado State.
Yeah.
He spends time at Colorado State, 3 years, Charles. He goes undrafted. He signs with the Denver Broncos as a free agent. He wins the Super Bowl ring. You'd have thought that had been the pinnacle.
Yeah.
He looked to sign as a free agent. He had a big contract set up with Cincinnati. He failed the physical. So he got turned down. So he had to go to Tampa Bay.
Yeah.
He played under the franchise tag last year, got the most money he's ever made in his career. I believe he made around $18 million, Charlton.
Yeah.
But here's a guy with perseverance. What gave him that perseverance was the education he would not walk away from.
Yep. It's very important. That's why I love blending sports and what people are doing in real talk. And some people say, oh, that's politics. We don't want to talk politics. But I want to bring you something where a lot of people say, oh, these guys can't get jobs or they can't get interviews. Well, if you show the man all you care about is how hard you can tackle and how fast you can run and how high you can jump, why would he hire you? Think about this, Big C. There's a lot of things that people talk about in life right now when it comes to the NFL. Looking at head coaches that are hired over the last decade. It wasn't that long ago, 2010, but it does bear out what we've been talking about. The passing over of Eric Bieniemy, the offensive coordinator for the Kansas City Chiefs, and then Byron Leftwich, Big C, one of the 7 jobs that were available in the offseason. It's highly unusual for offensive coordinators of their stature to be passed over, Big C. However, if you look at it from a black person's perspective, these guys are so qualified, they got their teams in the Super Bowl. But mainstream may look at them as saying, well, outside of a uniform, what good are you? If that makes sense to you, Big C, your thoughts?
Charlton, it makes total sense. I mean, every sports show, including us, pigeonholes athletes into being just athletes. No one talks enough about them as people. They talk about their performance. You know, did they get a triple-double? Did they get a double-double in basketball?
Yeah.
In football, did he have 100 yards in receptions? Did they have double-digit receptions?
Yeah.
Did he get 100 yards rushing? Did he throw for 300 yards?
Yep.
How many interceptions versus touchdowns did he throw? What was his quarterback rating? This is how you identify athletes, and majority of those are black athletes when it comes to that.
Yeah.
When you're talking about the NBA and you're talking about the NFL. You're talking about black athletes. You don't hear as much about the NHL. They never talk about a player in the NHL. They never talk about his background.
Yeah.
They never talk about anything because most of those guys in the NHL go right into professional hockey, right out of high school, right
Yeah.
out of the junior leagues, Charlton. Very few of them ever attend any type of college.
Yeah.
Baseball is the same way. Many players in Major League Baseball have been drafted out of high school.
Yep.
Half the league, Charlton, never went to college. So they turn to professional football and they turn to professional basketball, and they only want to belittle those athletes just dealing with numbers.
Yeah.
The guy is only as valuable as the number that he's displaying.
Yeah, I think that's why I like to do the best I can, along with what you're doing. And we're not perfect. Everybody has their own flavor of Kool-Aid. But I like talking about what people do in the job profession as well as much as talking about how many times they hit a home run. But think about this, going back to getting a job once you're finished playing sports. Since the hiring cycle following the 2010 season, 72 head coaches were hired. Think about that. Of those 72 that were hired, including some that were hired more than one time, Big C, this is so important. Been doing some research on it. Only 12, which is like 16.5%, have been African American. Hugh Jackson accounted for 2. He got on with the Raiders and also with the Cleveland Browns. Since the 2010 season, 13 offensive coordinators have coached in a Super Bowl, Big C, not including Sunday's game. Of that number, 6 of those men have been hired as a head coach in the NFL or college after appearing in the championship game. The New York Giants, Kevin Gilbride, Big C. The San Francisco 49ers, Greg Roman. Denver Broncos, Rick Dennison. Carolina Panthers, Mike Shula. The Seattle Seahawks, Darrell Belvin, Big C. And then you also look at Eric Bieniemy. But he was also in this year's Super Bowl 55 championship game. But there have been extenuating circumstances for some of those coaches. They were all Caucasian, except for Bieniemy not obtaining a head coaching job. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, it shows the narrative and the MO of the NFL owners is that they're not willing to extend the opportunity of power to many black men. You talked about the 16% of the coaches that have been hired have been African American, and Hugh Jackson got the job twice.
Yeah.
So realistically, we're looking at 13% of the coaches that have been hired have been African American in those jobs since 2000. Not only those are just offensive coordinators, Charlton. There's been several defensive coordinators that have been hired during that time.
Yeah.
So I remember the defensive coordinator that was with the Seahawks got the job with the Falcons as the head coach. His name eludes me at the moment, but he became the head coach for them and a couple other defensive coordinators also.
Yeah.
But when we looked there and we saw the success of this past Super Bowl, where 3 of the 4 coordinators were African American, Charlton, and none of them got a phone call about would you like to interview for a job or any serious consideration.
No, not at all.
If you wanted to hold on to one of those guys and you know they're playing in the biggest game of the year, you keep that position open, Charlton. There's no rush to fill that position. It's not like the draft is happening the week after the Super Bowl.
Yeah. You know, it's interesting with Leftwich in the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I'm going to give you a quiz. It kind of feel nervous. You don't have to answer the quiz if you're not qualified to answer, Big C, if that makes sense to you. So even if you believe that black men, as some people thought, intellectually inferior to white men, doesn't make any sense. All life came from Africa. Think about this. NFL owners. It's a quiz for every NFL owner, and I'll include you as a 33rd owner of NFL team, Big C. What's the complexion of the 2 offensive coordinators that helped guide their team to Super Bowl 55? I'm going to give you 2. You only got 2 answers. Were they white men who get about 90% of the jobs, or were they black men who get about 3% of the jobs of the league? Big C, your thoughts?
Well, if I'm an NFL owner right now, Charleston, I got to say, what does it matter? It's about the team. It's not about the guys who are making the X's and the O's. But
Yeah.
realistically, everybody knows, even every owner in the NFL knows that there were 2 African Americans.
Yeah.
But that's the last thing that they want to bring in. Successful African Americans
Yeah.
who are going to tell you how to run your organization and where you've been screwing up for the past decade.
Yeah, if about 3% of the men who you hire for coaches represent the guys that were in the Super Bowl from the AFC champion and the NFC champion, that's a clue. It's just a clue, if that makes sense. I do want to ask you some more things on some NFL players before we come up on the Big C pause. Marcus Mariota, he played high school football at St. Louis High School in Honolulu, Hawaii. They're the winningest high school in the state of Hawaii. I think Cowley is one of the most, successful high school coaches. And then he went to the University of Oregon and helped Oregon actually get back to the college football championship game where they got cheated by Ohio State. It's something from what they were saying back in the day, Big C. But he went on to play in the NFL, was down at Tennessee. Now he's playing for the Raiders in Las Vegas. But think about this. When you think about Marcus Mariota, a good fit for the Patriots. Just a thought, New England Patriots. The New England Patriots need a quarterback. I thought Cam Newton would work out, and I still hope that he will. But it's just a thought, Big C. Of the places that can acquire him during the trade market, he's 27 years old. He's still a young man, Big C. He's not that much older than Baker Mayfield, who helped Cleveland turn things around. And he's still someone with physical talent. And I believe, I think you saw some of that briefly watching him play this year when the Raiders had Derek Carr and Carr got injured. He was electric. He looked like an upgraded Cam Newton. Even though I would love to see Cam Newton work with Russ. Could you imagine Tom Brady? People were saying his skills fell off last year in New England, but he got with Brian Leftwich, and now he won a Super Bowl. I wonder if Cam had the chance to work with somebody like him also, but he could be moved around in the pocket. When you think about Mariota, he was accurate at all levels. He could throw the deep ball, he could throw the fade, he could throw the post, Big C, and he also has the ability to run with his legs when he gets in trouble, Big C. Your thoughts?
You know, when you're looking at a quarterback and how things have changed in the AFC East, Marcus Mariota showed promise when he played the one game for the Raiders when Carr pulled the groin muscle.
Yeah.
He came in, he ran the ball well, ran for a touchdown, Charleston. He was hitting receivers in stride. He wasn't leaving them hanging out to dry.
Yep.
Matter of fact, I thought the Raiders would even start him the following week. He had performed so well.
Yeah.
But, situations in different cities are different, Charleston, and that was one of the reasons why he left Tennessee. You're not always a fit for the certain schemes of offense.
Yeah.
I think with what New England did last year, bringing in Cam Newton, willing to adjust their offense to that style of quarterback,
Yeah.
I think it would be an upgrade with Marcus Mariota. Cam Newton couldn't throw the ball at all last year.
Yeah.
He threw more interceptions than he threw touchdowns. So that's not going to be effective in any NFL offense. And when you think about New England's defense, ironically, New England had a top 12 defense in the NFL last year, Charles.
Yeah.
Even with the paltry offensive play. If you bring somebody in like Mariota who can continuously extend plays just like Cam Newton could, but he throws the ball still. He still has an NFL caliber arm.
Yep.
I think all of a sudden you got a quarterback. He's only has, I believe, about $10 million on his contract for next year,
Yep.
which is the same that you would pay a rookie if you drafted him with his signing bonus. You're going to give a rookie $15 million in signing bonus. You got Mariota just like you had Cam on a one-year deal.
Yep.
If it works out, you can re-sign him, Charlton, and you'll have a quarterback that can stay around for the next several years.
Yeah, and you got to also keep in mind that Mariota came out of the Pac-12 conference, and they know how to pass the ball. They know how to read defenses. Cam Newton, came out of the SEC. They're run-heavy, so a lot of their quarterbacks that get drafted as a quarterback, and they don't do as well as Pac-12. That's just throwing a little shade, if that makes sense to you, Big
Well, we got to see how many Pac-12 quarterbacks
Wait.
make it to the Super Bowl, how many Pac-12 quarterbacks win NFL MVPs. I think it might be 0.
No, there's a couple out there. We're still counting. We got to count all the votes, Big C, not just the guys from the South. But it's all fair and level war. I do think Marcus Mariota is too good to be a backup quarterback. But he also is considered a minority, Big C. And sometimes if they hit their quota, they don't want to get too many guys. That makes the mainstream guy look bad. I want to take what's called the Big C pause. And when I come back, I want to talk to you about some landing spots for some of the NFL's biggest 2021 trades. We're going to take what's called the Big C pause. And in the words of the great Arnold Schwarzenegger, with the permission to dig for a meal, we'll be back. All right, we are back from the Big C Pause, also known as the Big C Timeout. You can follow Big C Sports 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on the #1 podcast network in the universe, iHeartRadio Podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Apple Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Google Podcasts. There's so many apps you can follow Big C Sports on, and I really do appreciate the way things are growing with Big C Sports. I also want to say thank you to Xfinity, Comcast, and Comcast Spotlight for presenting Big C Sports to the universe. Just like God said, let there be light. Open your cell phones and say, play Big C Sports Podcast. You will see all of our apps pop up from anywhere in the world, and I really do appreciate the opportunity as things have grown with Big C Sports. I want to get you back to the NFL because this is about jobs for people. It's not just about how fast can you run the 40, how far can you throw a football, and how hard can you tackle Big C. Predicting landing spots. Just a thought. Everybody has their own thoughts about things in life. The NFL's biggest 2021 trade targets. I want to take you to the Windy City, Big C. The Chicago Bears, if they could acquire Derek Carr, and for the 2021 first-round pick and a 2021 second-round pick and backup quarterback, would you believe Nick Foles, that might be something the Bears could look at, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, I mean, that's an interesting scenario. As much as you hear John Gruden and Mike Mayock talk about how much they're in love with Derek Carr, Charlton, they're always out there shopping. That was one of the reasons why they brought in Marcus Mariota, because they weren't all that sold on Derek Carr. They gave Marcus Mariota a huge backup contract. I believe it was $17 million that they gave him. But the Bears are constantly searching to find a quarterback since they had Jim McMahon playing there, and they went to the 85 Super Bowl, Charlton.
Yep.
So I think that could be a decent fit. Derek Carr is never going to get the love that he deserves with the Raiders. Maybe it's time for him to move on to another team that's wearing black.
Yeah, JFK, he was saying that he loved his wife too, but it was Marilyn Monroe. Marilyn Monroe, the one that sang "Happy Birthday, Mr. President." That would be uncomfortable. You're sitting there with your wife and kids, and some movie star is singing to you like, "Happy birthday, Big C. Happy birthday." If that makes sense to you. Just because you love somebody don't mean you're not looking elsewhere. San Francisco 49ers, Big C. And I know people were saying that Garoppolo has gotten them to a Super Bowl. They have a winning record with Jimmy G. But Jimmy G doesn't give you what touchdown Patrick Mahomes gives you. And he doesn't give you, in my opinion, even what Tom Brady gave you. There's guys that just maybe panic under pressure or a little bit happy feet. That's what a lot of people said. But think about the 49ers. They have a great defense. If they could acquire Sam Darnold from the Jets for Jimmy Garoppolo and a 2021 first-round pick, even though I think they should get Deshaun Watson, whatever you got to do, they got some history of dealing under the table. Get Deshaun Watson, you'll be back in the NFC Championship game. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, it would cost a lot less for them, Charlton, to make the acquisition of Jimmy Garoppolo. And here's a guy who's used to playing up in the Northeast in inclement weather. That's where he started his career in New England. Sometimes a change of scenery does somebody good.
Yeah.
Sam Darnold needs a change of scenery out of New York. You think about him, Pac-12 quarterback. He's been the lowest rating quarterback average over the last 3 years in the NFL, playing in New York. So maybe he needs to look for new digs, just like Cam Newton. Here's a guy that has threw more interceptions than he did touchdowns last year. So he needs a new offensive coordinator. But, I can't take it all from him. I got to look at Adam Gates, who was there for 2 years, who didn't have a clue as a head coach. Remember, he got rid of Ryan Tannehill out of Miami. We saw what Ryan Tannehill has done in Tennessee since that. So maybe Darnold needs to move also.
Yeah, hey, Big C, Todd Bowles look a lot better now when he's not wearing green, if that makes sense. The Jets had him, and they fired him because they did not want to build up a team to get to the Super Bowl. But here's another thought. Indianapolis Colts, just my opinion, the Colts have a solid defense. I think they're going to be really good on defense coming back this year. They had a good quarterback last year that decided to hang it up, Big C. But Indianapolis Colts, they could acquire Zach Ertz for Carson Wentz for a 2021 first-round pick, and maybe a partial salary absorption. That might be something that would work in Indianapolis, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, it would reunite both of those guys with Frank Wright, who was their offensive coordinator when they won the Super Bowl in Philadelphia, Charlton. And I think that Wentz needs to get out of Philadelphia. He is shell-shocked. He's never going to be the same emotional quarterback in that city with what he's had to go through with Nick Foles and then Jalen Hurts, Charlton.
Yep.
It is time for him to move on and kickstart his career. But
Yeah.
you would take his favorite target along with him if he and Zach Ertz could be part of a package deal in moving into Indianapolis. They already know the system that Frank Wright runs. That offense is solid. There's a running game as well as receivers in Indianapolis.
Yeah.
Now you bring in a former All-Pro tight end and quarterback to go along with that mix. You make them a favorite in their division.
Yeah, you really do. And there's another thought I want to ask you about the West Coast. Justin Herbert, he was a quarterback out of the Pac-12 champion Oregon Ducks, and he became the NFL Rookie of the Year. One of the best quarterbacks, even compared to guys that have been in the league for 2 or 3 years. He had a good season last year. But they need a better defense. If the Chargers could acquire J.J. Watt, who also wants to get out of Texas, Big C, for a 2021 third-round pick, imagine J.J. Watt and then Bosa as bookends on that defense. They would be much better instantly, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, the Texans need some cap relief. The Chargers need some defensive help. But their defensive line stayed injured last year. When you think about Ingram and you think about Bosa, they were both in and out of the lineup consistently, as well as Derwin James in the secondary.
Yeah.
If they can get those guys back healthy, then they can bring in Watt. I like Watt in any team. I'd like to see him go to Kansas City to help shore up that situation, trade him straight across for Frank Clark in Kansas City. Those salaries will absorb each other, and both of those teams would be better off for the wear.
Yeah.
But, wherever J.J. Watt goes, he's going to be an asset. He's played his last game in Houston. He's not going to be around. Too much of a salary cap hit for a defensive lineman in his 30s.
Yeah, it's a lot, and he's had some injuries too, but he still has a lot of football in him. That's just my opinion. I think he brings it, and they need the Chargers are not that far from being the second best team in the AFC West. I don't have a lot of faith in the Denver Broncos right now. I know John Elway has delinquished some of his responsibilities. The Raiders are the Raiders. John Gruden hadn't made the playoffs since he had Tony Dungy's players back in Tampa, back in 2004, somewhere in there. That's 16 years ago, Big C. And then the Chargers, again, they should have been in the playoffs had they kicked a couple of field goals that would not have missed going between the uprights, if that makes sense to you. But when you think about the salary cap, the looming issues for a lot of NFL teams, already contracts that exceeded expectations of the 2021 NFL salary cap season. The 2020 NFL season officially ended with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers victory in Super Bowl 55, and they really want to send thank you notes to all the officials that were part of that shenanigans. It's all fair level war. Are we still looking at the shenanigans that happened in Super Bowl 55? Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, it's one of the things, inconsistency always is going to happen.
Yeah, always going to happen. So it does mean it's time to look ahead to 2021, which officially begins with the start of the new contract year on March 17. Actually, it's going to be about 3 p.m. Central Standard Time. And when it comes to contracts, Big C, teams will have some serious and also some difficult decisions to make. We're going to see a lot of players that are going to be on different teams coming up this year, Big C. Your thoughts?
This will be some of the greatest migration ever in the NFL, Charlton. When you talk about a salary cap reduction of $18 million.
Yeah.
Teams have already started releasing players from their contracts from last year, Charlton, trying to clear cap space. Not only that, you got to look at teams who have an abundance of draft picks.
Yeah.
Those teams are going to be better suited because those won't be huge cap numbers, Charlton, versus trying to sign free agent veterans. So as free agents go out there on the market this year, Charlton, it's not going to be so lucrative that it has been in the past couple of years. The money's not bad in the NFL, but you won't see those huge contracts any longer with the salary cap going down in the NFL.
Yeah, guys, I hope a lot of guys save their money. It's hard to live on $20 million. Imagine having to live on $19 million, if that makes sense for you. But according to some of the salary cap for next season, going to be a $180.5 million, Big C. That's not as low as it could have been following a season in which COVID-19, it took away almost all of the gate money from almost all the teams. Only a few teams allowed fans in, not very many allowed in fans at all. But you think about traditional revenue streams, the league and its players agreed to a minimum of $175 million. That's all changing. As it stands right now, if you think about it, there's 13 franchises with existing contracts for 2021. They already exceed that number, Big C, for next year. Your thoughts?
So, they're looking around seeing how they can really trim the fat in those organizations. You think about that, Charlton. more than a third of the league is over the salary cap already.
Yeah.
That means they got players under contract, and they have not even drafted players yet, Charlton. We're still a couple months away from the NFL draft. So those teams right now have some heavy decisions that they have to make. And we're talking about teams that were even in the playoffs, Charlton, when it comes down to that.
Yeah.
Tampa Bay is one of those teams that's in that scenario that's over the cap. And so they got to make some decisions on their free agents.
Yeah.
How many of them do they not re-sign, Charlton, and not bring back, trying to make a run for a second consecutive Super Bowl?
Yeah.
But to have 13 teams right now in financial peril when it comes to cap hit, Charlton, in the NFL, that's a huge number. So you're going to see a lot of quality players, as you talked about, changing teams and going elsewhere.
Yeah.
There are 41 starting receivers in the NFL, Charlton, 41. They were free agents at the end of the season. Think about it, that they become free agents next week when free agency starts.
Yep. It's amazing.
41 starting NFL wide receivers.
Yeah.
And this is one of the deepest draft classes in over a decade at the wide receiver position.
Yeah.
So you're going to see a lot of household names sitting there saying, I wish I could still play.
Wait a second. Happy birthday, Mr. President. That's what they're going to watch someone sing happy birthday to him, make them feel better. And when I think about it, one of my favorite players when I really think about what guys do on and off the field, Big C, Russell Wilson and his wife Sierra, they do a lot of community activism, and a lot of guys do. They just don't have it as well known as it could be, Big C. But Russell Houdini Wilson, in the trade rumors, a lot of logical suitors are out there. You think about Russell Houdini Wilson. If he were to go down to the New Orleans Saints, Sean Payton would do cartwheels, Big C. If Wilson arrived as a successor to touchdown Drew Brees, Brees has been in 1 Super Bowl, Wilson's been in 2. Wilson's younger, he would bring some mobility. He'd be kind of like Taysom Hill when he's running, and also Drew Brees when he's passing, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, you think about how dynamic that offense would be once again down in New Orleans. You bring in Russell Wilson and have him running Sean Payton's offense. Drew Brees, like lunch, threw for 5,000 yards in that offense. They have a wealth of offensive talent. They have one of the top defenses in the NFL. And Russell has complained about lack of protection in Chicago and lack of a consistent running game. All of those things are in place in New Orleans. So you talk about giving somebody a gift. That's all that is. I mean, it's Mardi Gras every day if he shows up in New Orleans in the Big East.
Yeah. Well, maybe now that you've mentioned that, Sierra doesn't want more beads running around when he opens his wallet, if that makes sense to you, Big C. But it would be fascinating if you just realize that Seattle, you played a long time in Seattle, and you've gotten everything you can get out of it. Maybe it is time to look elsewhere and not keep hoping they're going to improve. Big C, the Pittsburgh Steelers. I've always thought that Mike Tomlin, he's a straight shooter. They've always had a good defense, the Pittsburgh Steelers. That's still curtain, Big C. This is just my opinion. Could you imagine the excitement in Steel City if Big Ben Roethlisberger were to retire, only to give way for Russell Wilson? Immediately, you go from a guy who does not throw a lot of interceptions in the games, Big C. You go to a guy that's a run-pass option immediately, and you go to a guy that is not going to be a detriment when you get to the playoffs because he's just immobile, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, you're talking about one of the most stable franchises in the NFL, Charlton, over the last 40 years, and that's the Pittsburgh Steelers. A team with ownership that believes in its coach. You got a coach that believes in his players. You talk about a perfect fit. You got a great young receiving core there in Pittsburgh. They learned how to develop receivers, Charlton. They got an outstanding defense. The offensive line is very capable in Pittsburgh. The running game is serviceable. Russell Wilson would be a dynamic addition to that division. But look at the teams in that division, Charlton. You got Baltimore. You got Cleveland. You got Pittsburgh. You got 3 playoff teams in that division that he would be walking into if he would go there to the AFC Pittsburgh Steelers.
Yeah. I think it would be an upgrade at the quarterback position, and we saw how good they were. But that division is moving to quarterbacks that can move around in the pocket like Lamar Jackson and Baker Mayfield, and that's what's going to most likely be knocking on the door to win that division. Bringing in a mobile quarterback is only going to help the Steelers. Another thought is when I think about the Washington football team, they don't have that big market appeal of a New York or even playing in Las Vegas, which seems like an underrated factor. But if Wilson played in Washington, I think he'd be wasting his time. I know their defense is legit, but offensively, I don't think they're there yet, and I wouldn't want to see him waste his time there. But that's my opinion, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, I would have to beg to differ with you on the offense. Think about it. Alex Smith went 5-1 as a starter. When you have a dynamic veteran quarterback with the weapons that they have in Washington and in that Eastern Division,
Yeah.
you automatically become the contender to win the division. So if he wanted to win right away in the NFC, that's the second best option beyond New Orleans, I believe, would be to go to the Washington football team, Charlton, because they have everything in place. And think about what Ron Rivera did with Cam Newton early in his career with the mobility. And Russell Wilson is a much better passer than Cam Newton has ever been.
Yeah, yep. Very interesting. It's always a different way to look at a sweet potato. I like it baked in the oven. You like them deep fried, but it's all fair and level more. They still taste good. I'm going to throw you a silly question. Just thinking about his mobility. Las Vegas Raiders. John Gruden, I think if he just a thought, don't throw up on me. John Gruden, Mike Mayock, I think they can lavish Derek Carr. I really like Derek Carr still with all the praise they want, but that means they're probably trying to unload him. But common sense says they'd pounce on an upgrade if they knew it was sustainable and feasible. I think money-wise, they already got an owner who's willing to give a guy $100 million contract that hasn't been to the playoffs since 2004 in John Gruden. He said he would quit if they didn't get to the playoffs after the second season. Well, he lied about that too. But would Russell Houdini Wilson make the Raiders a playoff team? I think he would just go there and get injured, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, you talked earlier about, Derek Carr possibly going to the Bears in a trade.
Yeah.
But if he was to go to Las Vegas, think about it, his wife's an entertainer. She can perform there in Las Vegas. I mean, she can become resident at one of the big casinos and perform while he's, at work. She can be at work.
Yeah.
So I think that would be a great business decision for the family, Charlton, to have his wife set up shop in Vegas where she would be working and he's working also.
Yeah.
And so this would work in both aspects, Charlton, as far as a family blending, and he would still be out there on the West Coast somewhat.
Yeah, it's amazing when your husband makes $35 million and you still got to go to work. Hey, but maybe she makes more money than him. They don't tell us how much her makes as an entertainer. It's all fair and level more. But you think about this too, Big C. I think about the Dallas Cowboys. They had a miraculous game when the Cowboys came into Seattle, and Seattle won that game. They were sleepless in Seattle because Dak Prescott came and passed all over the place, as well as Houdini Wilson. But think about this. Dallas Cowboys, in terms of likelihood, they're much farther down the list. You have Dak Prescott. After all, he's already proven himself in Dallas that he deserves a big commitment. But he doesn't seem to want to get one from the guy who's writing the check. Jerry Jones, if he tags Prescott, rather than swallowing that lucrative pill of a huge extension, he's waited too long to dole out, Big C. Just in my opinion, if he ships Dak Prescott to Seattle for a quarterback he believes is more likely to be championship material, Wilson's already been to 2 Super Bowls, Big C. Would have had 2 championships if he just learned how to hand off one more time to beast mode, Big C. So why would Wilson refuse to go? By the way, you don't get much bigger than America's team, the Dallas Cowboys. The Cowboys, absolutely, they feel like a franchise that would go big and bold. For the talent of Wilson, if you think about it, Big C, the only hurdle would be convincing Seattle to send them within the same conference, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, I mean, when you talk about America's team and having one of the darling players of the NFL, he just won the NFL Walter Payton Man of the Year award, Charlton.
Yep.
So everybody knows Russell Wilson and how quality of an individual that he is. The Dallas Cowboys have never committed to Dak Prescott.
No.
And so they either have to franchise him or just let him go out on the open market. I don't think that Jerry Jones wants to let a potential franchise quarterback out on the open market for nothing. So I see them franchising Dak Prescott potentially, and they can work a trade with Seattle in this scenario. Let him go to Seattle and do a long-term deal in Seattle. I think it would benefit both organizations. Does the Dallas Cowboys need a little more help on the offensive line? Yes, they do, but they have 3 solid receivers there, Charlton, to give Russell Wilson a lot to work with. Not only that, there's no state tax in the state of Texas. So, I mean, this is a tremendous opportunity. Even if you put Houston on the table and swap him for Deshaun Watson, Charlton, the benefit of Russell Wilson going to Texas is that there's no state tax. Not only that, his wife Sierra was born in Texas.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that's a lot of good reasons, Big C. But he doesn't want to go anywhere near Houston. Maybe Dallas makes sense because they are loaded at the receivers, and Houston's not. But that's a good thought because sometimes you just need to change a pair of shoes. When you've been wearing the same shoes for 8 years, sometimes you do better when you change a pair. Speaking of changing shoes, Big C, I think about a team that is knocking on the door of the AFC East, Big C, the Miami Dolphins. And there's reason that the Dolphins have been linked to Deshaun Watson. There's at least a small reason Coach Brian Flores felt the need to use Swaggy Fitzpatrick as a relief pitcher, if that makes sense to you, as a baseball metaphor for the rookie Tua Tagovailoa out of Alabama. A lot of Alabama quarterbacks have a hard time finding the receivers in the NFL. They look real good when every one of the receivers get drafted, but not always the same in the NFL. But think about it. Miami has yet to be sold on the long-term plans of the quarterback. Tua also, like Mariota, he played at St. Louis High School in Honolulu, Hawaii, and then he went to Alabama, Big C, and ended up doing this thing for Nick Saban. But the Dolphins, they have a lot of capital, Big C, and if they have Tua to dangle for trades, maybe they don't play him as much because they don't want to show the weak spots, and that's why they brought in Fitzpatrick. But could you imagine Russell Wilson going down to the coast of Florida, Big C, playing in Miami? Your thoughts?
Well, he was just down there in Tampa at the Super Bowl, so he knows what the climate is like down there in Florida. Like I said, his wife's in the entertainment business. Miami's a big entertainment city also.
Yeah.
No state tax down there. But Brian Flores has built a winner down in Miami, and all they need is a quarterback to round it out. We didn't see consistency from either Tua or Fitzpatrick last year, Charlton. They need somebody to come in and take control of that offense and say, I'm your leader.
Yeah.
Because Miami has all the tools in place. They have the draft capital also, Charlton, to make a trade enticing with any team in the NFL, whether it's Watson or Wilson. I believe either one of those quarterbacks, Charlton, automatically makes them an equal to the Buffalo Bills in the NFC East.
Yeah.
AFC East.
Yeah, I think so in the AFC. In my opinion, New England's going to be back. They had some players opt out for COVID, and they're most likely going to have that situation addressed. No wonder what they're going to do at quarterback. No one really knows. I would love to see him work with Cam Newton, just my opinion. But it's all fair and love and war. But I do want to bring you back to something that you talked about, Russell Wilson being down at Super Bowl 55. He was sitting in the press box with Roger Goodell, has the Walter Payton Man of the Year award. So he does a lot of great things. But I got to bring you back to just a thought. We talked about Mike Tyson and Buster Douglas when we opened the show, and how they robbed Mike Tyson because Buster Douglas was knocked out for 13 seconds, but he got the 13-second count. I thought you got the 10 seconds to get up, not 13, but it's all fair, love, and war. But Super Bowl 55, the officiating, in my opinion, was terrible. No conspiracy talk, just typically inconsistent, Big C. There's no conspiracy, maybe, but there's also no commissioner, Roger Goodell, hitting on a button that says to call a foul or not to call a foul or throw a flag or not throw a flag, Big C. But I think they punished the Chiefs. Yeah, the offensive line was banged up, but when you have, I think they had 11 penalties, 120 yards. They had more yards and penalties than their running backs had rushing, Big C. They didn't throw the penalties on themselves. Tampa only had like 4 penalties called the whole game, and 2 of those 4 were called in the last 5 minutes of the game. Now, the NFL, people can talk about that for years. Even going back to Franco Harris, when the Steelers robbed the Raiders with the immaculate reception, a lot of Raiders still swear that ball touched the ground, but they didn't show for some reason, they didn't have cameras that could show the turf in that game because they didn't like Al Davis, if that makes sense to you. But I just want to get your thoughts if that makes any sense. There's always been talk of conspiracies, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, I mean, people who say conspiracies in the NFL, that's a tough road. I mean, look at the New Orleans Saints. They've lost the last 3 years of playoff games at home, Charlton, and people are saying conspiracy.
Yeah.
When you go back to the game against the Rams and the no call, you go back against the game with the Vikings and the no call. And even in this last year against Tampa, they lost a playoff game at home.
Yeah.
People are always paying attention to officials when the games are critical. But if you look throughout the years, Charlton, there's always mistakes made by the officials. Can they get it right if they really care to? Yes, they can. Can they tell officials not to throw so many flags in a game?
Of course.
Yes, they can.
Yeah.
But it should be beyond just the coaches having a challenge flag. when you call New York and New York takes control in the last 2 minutes of the half, Charles,
Yeah.
that owner should always be there for New York.
Yeah.
When you see an egregious thing and an official making a bad call, then New York needs to be able to buzz in and say, we're going to review this.
Yeah.
Just like they do on all scoring plays, Charles. When there's a questionable foul on the field and a flag is thrown or not thrown, Charles, they should always say, we got a booth review on this.
I agree.
And that would eliminate a lot of that talk of conspiracy and the referees not getting it right. But I think the biggest part of this, Charlton, is that the NFL doesn't want to look like its big brother and that they have referees out on the field that are inept and don't have the ability to do their job. They get it right more than they get it wrong.
Yeah.
It's just when they get it wrong, it resonates more.
Yeah, and because so many people gamble, of course, they pay attention to every play because sometimes they got money on the line. But I just think about, just a thought, the inconsistency, NFL officiating, an issue in 1 week, such as the NFC Championship game between the Buccaneers and the Packers. They let them play. They basically let them be all over each other, Big C. It was like a UFC fight in that game. And then a week later, it seems like the rules changed. Of course, different crews were involved, but things that are called much tighter. And this is a weekly thing in the NFL. It's long been a problem, in my opinion, especially for guys that bet. And the issue just gets magnified because it was Super Bowl 55. But several key first half sequences changed the course of the game, and that's going to be discussed for years. And it's just like in baseball. You can say strike, or you can say ball. Sometimes you'll see the batter talking to the umpire, are you giving me the inside, or do I get anything on the outside? You can't just call it down the middle, because many times a strikers call one is 2 or 3 inches inside the plate, or 2 or 3 inches to the outside, and depending on what umpire, you're going to get a different call, just like in football. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, I think what bothers people the most in the Super Bowl, Charlton, is that these two quarterbacks met up against each other 3 years ago.
Yeah.
And the same type of scenario played out, where Brady's team got the advantage on the calls from the officials.
Yeah.
Even when Brady was hitting the shoulder pads and it was called that he was hitting the helmet.
Yep.
We saw Patrick Mahomes get punched in the head by Sue, and there was no call made, and the official was standing within 5 yards of the play, Charlton, when Sue punched him in the helmet.
Yeah.
You know, we saw the offside once again on the field goal attempt right before the half, Charlton. Just like you saw the offsides when they intercepted the ball in Kansas City 3 years ago. You had the same thing on an interception in the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
When Kansas City picked off the ball once again. You get an offside penalty against Kansas City. So it seems that is in the big game is really critical when Brady and Mahomes match up. It seems like the Kansas City Chiefs defense is at a total disadvantage when it comes to the referees, because they're getting a lot of calls against them where Brady's team's defense are not getting any calls against them.
Yeah. Well, the league wanted to crown Brady as a GOAT, and they something was going on. Gematria, whatever it was, they crowned him as a GOAT. He got his 7th championship in 10 tries, Big C. It happened on, Super Bowl 7. He was a 7th round. He was a 7th quarterback taken in the 99 draft, 199 overall. Just things line up, and people get what they want out of it. But I still love the game. And it may even sound silly to say this. I kind of like when they allow mistakes to happen. Because if you're playing golf, no one can really cheat at golf. That's not true. They have ways to figure that out too. But if you're playing golf, if you either get the ball in the hole or you're not. If you're boxing, someone say, well, they're going to give one guy 5 rounds and the other guy 7 rounds. Or someone that in the same fight, another judge may have it 9 rounds to 3. And the third judge may have it, 7 rounds to 5. So there's no consistency in that either. But I also think that's what's exciting about sports. Like going to your birthday party and you're sitting there with your wife and kids and you got an entertainer singing, "Happy birthday, Mr. President." It can be uncomfortable, but it's still exciting. See your thoughts?
Well, hey, Alicia Keys can come sit here at the house and sing happy birthday to me. We don't have to go to a restaurant.
Yeah, you don't have to go to a restaurant. But if you want to know what's uncomfortable, think back to the JFK when Marilyn Monroe was singing, "Happy birthday, Mr. President." He's like, come on, my kids are here. But it's all Fred Leavenworth. Big C, final thing, football is something else. It's a sport, and I thought the point you brought up earlier in the week, was something that should happen. Stop hiring coaches until the Super Bowl is over. Because some of these coaches that want the offensive coordinators, like Bieniemy or Leftwich, whoever they are, they want an opportunity also to prove that they can lead a team. You got guys like Saleh last year that he missed out because the 49ers were in the Super Bowl, and now he's coaching the New York Jets. You have other coaches that were playing in Super Bowls that are better than a lot of head coaches that were hired. Case in point, their teams got to the Super Bowl, Big C, and their offensive or defensive coordinators. Let this happen so that you can't hire anybody until the day after the Super Bowl. That would help more with parity and equality, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, it comes down to the owners when they have their next meeting to make that decision. Just as we talked yesterday about free agency starting and the important dates that are looming for NFL teams and players, actions that they cannot take before those certain dates. Why can you not implement that for the owners also?
Yeah.
To make it a fair, open surface, Charlton, because we know that the damn Rooney Rule doesn't work.
Yeah.
So you have to find something else. I even heard it on a show called PTI.
Yeah.
That was their opening monologue yesterday, what we had talked about the day before.
Yeah.
Set up coaching hirings can't happen until the week after the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
They listened to the show. They made it the opening of their show.
Yeah.
That's how relevant it is, what we said, Charlton, how prevalent it is,
Yeah.
and how important it is. You have to give people a fair opportunity. The disadvantage that you give black coaches now in seeking head coaching jobs in the NFL is the equivalent to bringing in a batter to replace a batter, and he already has 2 strikes on him.
Yeah.
And you got a guy throwing out there in heat, and he's never swung at a ball all game long, and it's the 8th inning.
Yeah.
And he only has one opportunity not to get stricken out, Charlton.
Yep.
So this is the same situation that you've done to black coaches in the NFL. You've given them 1 strike, not 3,
Yep.
1 strike. So when they walk in there, they only have 1 strike. They don't have 3 strikes like white coaches do, where they're going to get that opportunity. Success for a black man in the NFL really means nothing in a leadership role. You find ways to dismember him and take him down. Go back to Doug Williams when he won the Super Bowl as a black quarterback. They found ways to dismember him and take him down as a human being because he never got an opportunity again. And right after that, when you think about what Randall Cunningham did, set an NFL record for scoring with the Minnesota Vikings when they went 15-1 that year and lost the game to Atlanta, who went on to the Super Bowl. Randall Cunningham never got an opportunity again.
Yeah.
Then you look at what just happened to Patrick Mahomes, the most dynamic quarterback in the NFL over the last 3 years. He gets to the Super Bowl, and his defense gets penalized out of the game. And he gets no protection from the officials on some egregious late hits by Tampa. Yes, they had a great defense, but they also did some dirty things.
Yeah.
So when you look at what the NFL does to hold back black people, even today, as players and coaches, you just have to look at it and say, hey, would they do that to the white guys?
Yeah, and sometimes we know a lot of things are about more than just can you coach, and it's about skin complexion. There's a lot of things, and that's why I love Big C Sports, and I really do believe that a lot of people are paying more attention. They won't give us credit, but they will use what we talk about. Big C, happy birthday, Mr. President. That's so funny. Back in the day, there's a man by the name of Drew Boudini Brown. He was known as Muhammad Ali's right-hand man, and he would always tell Ali, float like a butterfly and sting like a bee. Rumble, young man, rumble with all you got to use. How can you lose? Rumble, young man, rumble. Big C, what are you looking forward to in this boy's universe?
Well, Charlton, I think I'm going to have to make a phone call when we get off the phone. Give Mike Tyson a call just to make sure that he did find that mouthpiece, Charlton. I know he was dazed and confused
He was
over there in Tokyo, but it's been 31 years. If he hasn't found that one, we'll get him a new one. Once again, I want to thank our frontline healthcare workers, our nurses, doctors, and first responders.
Yep. It's all fair, love, and war. Happy birthday to the universe. You can follow Big C Sports Monday through Friday at 5 and 6 p.m. worldwide. Follow Big C Sports on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America, Big C Sports Podcast. As we always tell you, my mom always says there's never, ever an excuse for racism or domestic violence. If you know any man, woman, or child going through that garbage, please pick up the phone and ask for help, because no man, woman, or child should have to go through that garbage on their own. And as we always tell you on every Big C Sports Show, we thank you, we appreciate you, and we hope that you have a super fantastic day.